Hey, this is Camylio. I'm hanging out with Rob from Front Row Live.
Congratulations with this new signing with Republic Records. I am not surprised that this happened. I've been watching your TikToks for some time now, and before we really dive into this signing, I want to know what your artist development process was like, specifically with TikTok. Was this an avenue that you for sure targeted, or was this something that you were just like, I need a way to pass the time and maybe try and promote my music, and then everything happened?
So it's funny to be honest, because I've been making music for a couple years. Starts out producing in my bedroom. It goes from there. My dream was always to be like writer producer guy. Like that's how I wanted to make it. That was the idea. And like one magic moment leads to another gives me a little confidence, and I find myself home from college for winter break, ready to become an artist. And like the first step with that was like, yo, there's this thing called TikTok, and I feel like some people have had some success. Maybe we could start slow, like start posting something, like get the name out, and became a like do it every day and try to make people feel something. And I guess 6 months it's worked pretty well. So it was definitely like let's see if we can get the name out, but it happened fast. Let's put it that way.
As you started to gain traction on TikTok, what really, I mean, what went through your mind? Did you start reconsidering the producer writer aspect and start considering more of an artist, or did you still have that same mentality and just kept doing these covers that you were doing?
I think I'll always like. I mean, both like writing and producing my own stuff, but like wanting to work with other people because collaborating is the best thing ever. But by the time we hit the go button on TikTok, it was like, all right, Camylio Arts Project. I have a story to tell. Like, I want people to know me for that stuff. As far as like as things roll along, there's very few feelings like it. It's really something special when you realize like, wow, like all the songs that were on my Spotify had like 20 streams each, like the less than 1,000 kind of single for like insane amount of time. Literally, it felt like overnight, like it's getting streams and people reaching out and people seem to care about the things that I had to say in the songs, and it was a special moment. There's really no feeling like it for sure.
Now, just because this is your backdrop right now, I want to talk about the importance of your backdrop on TikTok, just because you had that dedicated set for all of your TikToks once you got the hang of things. So is that the backdrop right behind you? And like the reality is like when you look at your TikToks, it looks like you're in a full production. But what's the reality from your perspective?
That's the hilarious part. I've gotten that like comment before, but that is very much the Camellio backdrop. You can see one of the lights over there, but there's some others that I set up in the same spot. Pretty big nerd, and I found early on that like resetting everything up was just a big pain as far as trying to be consistent. So like, I don't know if you can see the spots on the floor, but like the reason all the videos look the same is because everything was like standardized, and I made sure all the lighting was in the same spot. But yeah, I thought it was important, especially in the beginning, to like kind of establish like what you were gonna expect. Every time you saw the name pop up on your for you page, like you could know that like you would know it was me from like second one, which I thought was pretty. Aside from like the musical part, because
Right.
but yeah, that's the funny story is that like that was like I came home in November and I remember being like having that thought, and I went on Amazon and like found the first like photo shoot backdrop set I could possibly find, and it served me well so far. I mean, I still use it to this day. So
That's
absolutely.
amazing. Now, for me personally, I was scrolling through TikTok and your voice really like took me into your world. The way your rumble kind of gets me into like to feel the feelings and emotions that you kind of bring out in your music, or even in the covers that you were doing. So, what was it that got the attention of Republic Records, and how did that meet come about? And for you, what was it about Republic Records that you felt was the right home for your music?
Absolutely. I think in all those initial meetings, the big thing that we definitely heard was that Republic in their words, they're looking for artists, looking for people that they really feel have like a story to tell, and you can tell just by the way they present that there's emotion behind it. There's something there, and I truly think that something like I talked about with Kevin on the way up is we were trying to figure out like how to go viral on TikTok, how to make that video that would do well, and everything we tried, it all kind of came back to like, does it make you feel something? Does the vocal performance, does the video make you watch it and be like, wow? And now you're thinking about some memory from 3 years ago that hasn't come up for a while, but all of a sudden because of this 12 second snippet of this song, it's really inciting something. And I think, I mean, as a listener, but also as the artist, like there's nothing more special than being able to generate that emotion in that moment, like from music. And I truly believe that that was the thing that like like caught the attention of Republic, just because anytime you can make people feel something, I think there's something special there. And on our side, as far as like why Republic, I truly think after going through the rounds and making some incredible connections, Republic really stood out as the team that we were just most confident in. Like from meeting all different members of the team on a million different Zoom calls, and our main A&R Ben Adelson over there, like there wasn't a team that felt, first of all, as passionate about the project, like believing in not the kid on TikTok, but Camylio, the artist that has a story to tell. But also they seem like the best. They seem like this well-oiled machine that really knew what they were doing. They had this vision for the project, and they gave us the confidence we needed to move forward.
So you get signed and you start working on new material. So now we got the debut single, which is Love and Hate. And, you know, it's such a beautiful track. I feel like it's the perfect introduction to your music, to your voice, to your emotions. But for you personally, what was it about this song that you felt was the perfect debut single for, this new signing?
I think what made that the lead single, not only in my mind but in the entire team's kind of collective decision, was that it's familiar. Like if you've been following me on TikTok, it feels like a Camilio song, but it
Mm.
also I think hints at what's to come. Because a big thing that I'm passionate about, especially like the production background and my personal tastes, is that I want to be a storyteller, and I want to do so more than just like purely like piano ballads and acoustic elements. And I think Love and Hate hints at what's to come. And I think as we go through like really these next releases in this initial EP, like there's a sense of familiarity, like that emotional kind of style of song, but I think there's something new. There's something fresh that I hope becomes what defines me. So
You have a good point about that because I just from TikTok alone, like when I listen to your voice, first of all, your voice, you can put me in a room, in a dark room and just hear different voices and I'll know like which one your voice is. Like I feel like you're so distinct, which I feel like is hard nowadays. But at the same time, I also picture the Ivory Keys. And I love the fact that this debut single starts off with the piano, and then we start listening to your voice and that rumble that you have, and that pain and that emotion that you kind of bleed through your music. So take me into that creative process for this debut single. And I know you're also the producer, but now that a label and a big machine is behind you, like, did you have any opportunities to work or collaborate with other producers, or did you solely want to keep it to yourself?
from day one walking in, like I knew that I could insist on doing everything myself and have it just be me, but that reality of it is that some of my favorite people that I've had a chance to work with in the last 6 months have been just uber talented writers and producers, and I think you'll really see that with the EP, but with Love and Hate too. You mentioned me as a producer, but I co-produced Love and Hate with an awesome friend, Dennis Neuer. And Dennis, me, and another friend named Molly, we wrote it together on some random day in February over a Zoom session, and it's truly become one of my favorite sessions that I've gone in. Because it starts with a conversation. It starts with getting to know each other. It was our first time like being together, the three of us, and it's a lot of storytelling. It's a lot of like, so what's going on? Like, what's going on in your life? Like, what do you really need to talk about? And the big like memory that I have from that session is like we were talking about like exes and former relationships and like starting to get into it. And the one thing that I kind of had on my mind was, I guess, the inspiration for the first line of the song, where I'd mentioned something was like, like this song or that song. I used to love that song. It's a great reference for what I'm trying to do, but I can't listen to it anymore because I used to love that song and I associate it with like these three memories from this one person. And as soon as things go south, all of a sudden, like there's no chance that I could ever listen to that playlist with that song in it anymore because
Right.
it's your opinion of it changes somehow just with different experience. So yeah, it was incredible. That was the first day, and then you tell stories for 6 hours, and you walk out, and all of a sudden there's a song sitting in front of you. And it's truly it's one of my favorite things in the world where you can go into a room trusting with a couple friends and kind of talk about your feelings for 7 hours, and you walk out and you body of work that is representative of everything everyone really had to say. And I remember on the day Dennis had played keys, and Dennis and Molly did like a quick like demo, just and they shot over to me for me to record with my voice and then build out further. Um, and one of my favorite parts about that song is that like we went back and went to like redo the piano with like a proper like setup and like whatever else and hi-fi everything, and ended up still going back to the original like demo tape that happened on the day because there was something just magical about that, in the moment kind of experience. So
I mean,
um,
it's part of the reason why, like, why I mentioned earlier that I kind of fell in love, because it's I feel those emotions, and I feel like that's what that demo did. That was the true raw emotions coming out, as opposed to redoing everything. You don't get that same kind of vibe or that same kind of feeling. One of the great things about the song is the hook that you have on this track. Tell me a little bit about writing this hook, and how did this hook really come about? Was this something that just naturally identified itself, or is this something that you had to go over and over before it finally had its identity?
I think going into writing the hook, I feel like ironically we started from the pre and then kind of built the story like, all right, well, like we haven't with the verse and it builds out from that. But once we got to the hook, it came down like, what is like, how can we make people understand that feeling where you are months apart and you're now just realizing that like as you go through and you hit shuffle on your like songs on Spotify, all of a sudden you find yourself skipping a bunch of them because they bring up certain memories. Like what is that mindset? And it just becomes telling stories again. And the one that absolutely stuck out um, was the idea where like no matter what you it could be so untrue, but you're always going to imagine that like they're moving on first. It's always going to be this little thought and a little voice in your head that says they're doing amazing, why do you feel like this still? Like shouldn't you be past this because they're smiling and posting on Instagram and seems to be having the time of their life. Like and that was really that's what we wanted to get out. And I remember um, so I've been in college for the last like 2 years, and one of the things, college has like a nightlife, but I found myself in my second year, honestly, staying home sometimes on later nights and working on music. But when you're up late at night on a Friday at 2 in the morning, sometimes you receive texts that you weren't expecting receiving, and I received ones from many of those, and that essentially became the start of the whole like every night you're out late and I'm losing my mind because your imagination can be your worst enemy sometimes. Um, as far as like the rest of it goes, I think a big part was also acknowledging that while you're going through this moment, the reason it's so hard and the reason that it feels so like conflicting to be imagining them doing well and you're still struggling with things is because this is a person you cared about so deeply, but you cared about them in the context of imagining them being happy with you. And that's why it's so easy to go from love to hate because that strong feeling doesn't disappear as soon as it stops becoming love. And as you're going through the healing process, I think it can definitely transition to hate until you get through that phase of things.
Right. Right. Now, is this song because of this vulnerable topic that you kind of presented as the debut? Uh, is this what the debut EP is going to be more so like, or was it one of those things where you want to get that most vulnerable track out of the way before we get to listen to a different kind of sound, a different kind of style?
I think the EP is probably collectively as vulnerable as I've been in all of the songs that I've worked on, just as like writing and producing prior to really wanting the Camylio project, and even with just some like because you write a lot of songs to eventually condense down to like your
Hmm.
the winners, your favorites for the EP. And I think the entire process was just trying to be as vulnerable as possible. And the songs that feel the most genuine, the ones that really feel like stories, those are the ones that ended up making the EP. Um, as far as like, I think it pulls from a lot of different sections of my life too. Like, it's not all about like one specific period. I think that, like I'm 20 now, which I've been told is young, but like I've still have years of experiences with different like relationships, but also like friendships and people to pull from. And I think that it's a great introduction to me. I think that someone listening to it will almost get a snapshot of like my last like 5 years of really like growing up and going through like first relationships and experiences. And I think like I've said this before, but I do my best to really be a storyteller. And I
Hmm.
think the only way for people to truly relate to the music is for on my end to be vulnerable and open about the emotions so that people have something to latch onto. So I hope that the vulnerability you feel, love and hate, is something that you'll continue to experience with my music going forward.
Now, was that an easy transition for you because you mentioned earlier that initially you just wanted to be producer, songwriter, but now that you also are the artist and you are performing these songs that were or are so vulnerable, a vulnerable side of you, did you have a hard time kind of being able to record those songs, knowing that, okay, now like this is getting more vulnerable than it was when I was just a songwriter?
I will say that the actual recording of the stuff is like one of the most therapeutic, awesome moments ever. I love that part, like the recording of
Amazing.
it. When you take a step back and all of a sudden it's the putting the song out, like showing people, whether it be talk or just like social media in general, and knowing that, hopefully a lot of people will listen to those songs and like enjoy it for themselves, but also like wonder what the real story is behind it. That was something that very initially like caught me off guard. You don't like think that far in advance while you're writing them, and also you realize like, oh, I am bearing my soul for like a lot of people at once. And what it eventually came to, because this was like a big like both internal talk, but like with like my mom and some other people, it came down to like I feel like as long as you're being honest, as long as the story that you're telling is true, or at the very least like true to you, I think it's something that I can stand behind. And that's the way I feel about love and hate, but that's also the way I feel about everything else in the EP, where nothing I said on there feels dishonest. And even with the people that might listen to songs and feel like it's either about them or about a situation that they could recognize, I think at the end of the day, like if you're telling the truth and you're being honest and you're not being destructive to anybody else in the process, I think that's the only way to really write songs. It feels right to make up something that you consciously just have never totally felt, at least in the way that I feel that I write for myself. So
Now, to close us off, what would you say was like the biggest challenge that you found yourself facing during your development of kind of discovering who you are as an artist? Would you say it had to do with the songwriting? Would you say it had to do with learning to sing the way that you did? Would you say it was being able to put yourself in front of the world and just open up to them?
I think the biggest challenge is almost like a mix of a lot of those things in the sense of I grew up with so many different musical influences. I love so many different styles. If you told me to sit down on a Saturday and just make a song aimlessly, like it could sound almost like anything on a given day, and a lot of it was like not only like what am I most passionate about making, but what feels the most authentic. What's the song that I can make and sit back at the end of the day and hit play and be like it feels right. It feels genuine, and it made me feel something. And that was definitely a process. And I don't think anybody who's being honest will ever say that they've truly found their final sound. I don't think that's a thing. I feel like the honest thing is developing and really learning more about yourself as you make music. But I think that settling in on what this like initial sound was going to be was definitely something that was challenging because there's a million different ways to go, and a lot of them feel honest. But I truly feel that what Love and Hate represents, but also what the EP represents, is it's not only the best sound that I can possibly make right now, but it's the sound that when I go back and I listen through the EP and I just sit back and enjoy it, it feels right. It feels like Camylio, it feels like Leo, and it feels emotional and honest. So
Dude, that's the best way to close this up. Well, once again, congratulations with the success with TikTok, with the signing, and with the debut single. And I'm looking forward to hearing more from you. So congratulations with that, and thank you for taking the time.
thank you so much, man. I really appreciate you taking the time for this and all of the kind words. And yeah, I'm excited for the future. So thanks again.